In most wealthy countries, the biggest source of greenhouse gas is industry or traffic. In New Zealand, it is a paddock. About half of this country's gross greenhouse gas emissions come from farming, not from farm machinery, from the animals themselves. There is no other developed nation with a profile that looks like this. That single fact shapes every climate argument New Zealand has ever had. It also explains a question that puzzles many people who move here. Why does a country full of hydro, wind, and geothermal power still miss emissions targets? The answer has 4 stomachs. The chemistry behind it is genuinely interesting. A cow or a sheep eats grass. Grass is tough, and no mammal can digest it alone, so the animal keeps a chamber of microbes to break the grass down. Those microbes produce methane as a byproduct. The animal burps it out. That is the largest single source of greenhouse gas in New Zealand, not exhaust pipes, burps. The second farm gas is nitrous oxide. It comes mostly from animal urine and from nitrogen fertilizer on soil. It is far less famous than carbon dioxide and far more powerful per molecule. Together these two gases make roughly half the national total. Now here is where New Zealand did something no other country had done. Methane behaves differently in the atmosphere from carbon dioxide. Carbon dioxide released today is still warming the planet in 300 years. It accumulates like water filling a bath with no plug. Methane is a stronger heat trapper, but it breaks down. After about 12 years, most of it is gone. Picture instead a tap running into a leaky bucket. If the flow stays constant, the level in the bucket stays roughly constant. The warming from a stable herd is largely already in the system. A growing herd raises the level. A shrinking herd lowers it. That distinction sounds academic. It is worth billions of dollars. In 2019, Parliament wrote it into law. That law is usually called the Zero Carbon Act. It set 2 targets instead of 1. Long-lived gases, mainly carbon dioxide and nitrous oxide, head towards net zero. Biogenic methane, the gas from animals and landfills, gets its own separate reduction target. Scientists call this the split gas approach. It was unusual enough that other farming nations came to look at it. New Zealand invented a piece of climate policy for a problem it could not export. But notice what a split gas target does not do. It does not put a price on the gas. Farm emissions have never entered the emissions trading scheme. Every other major sector faces a carbon price. Agriculture does not. Between 2019 and 2022, farmers, government, and iwi worked on this together. They tried to design a farm-level alternative. It produced a detailed scheme. That scheme was not implemented, so the country arrives at a strange arithmetic. Half of the emissions sit outside the main pricing tool. The targets, however, apply to the whole country. Do the subtraction, and the consequence is unavoidable. If half the emissions carry a light load, the other half carries a heavy one. In 2026, official documents made this explicit. Advice to ministers was blunt. Transport, industry, and other sectors would absorb the slack left by weaker farm policy. Officials also warned about the emissions trading scheme. Alone, it would not keep New Zealand inside its emissions budgets. Hold those 2 lines together, and the politics of the next decade opens up. Every debate here about petrol, freight, cement, or electricity is partly a debate about cows. Very few of those debates mention cows. There is a reason nobody wants to be first to move. Dairy and meat exports pay for much of what New Zealand buys from the world. A tax on those emissions is a tax on the country's largest export earner. That is not an excuse. It is the shape of the trap. A small trading nation cannot easily price a gas that its competitors do not price. so the search shifted from taxing the burp to stopping it. Vaccines, feed additives, breeding low methane sheep. New Zealand runs some of the world's most serious research on livestock methane. That research exists because the alternative is politically impossible here. Here is what to carry away. New Zealand's emissions problem is not a failure of clean energy. Our electricity is already among the most renewable in the developed world. The problem is that half of our climate footprint eats grass. No amount of solar panels touches it. So the real question is not whether New Zealand can cut carbon dioxide. It has proven repeatedly that it can. The question is one this country has quietly postponed for over 20 years. If half your emissions come from your livelihood, what exactly are you willing to trade?